Few are taught the fundamentals of finance and money management in school. This limited series podcast tackles the basics all students need to know to become financially independent, made by students for students. On this episode, we sat down with Alexandre LeBlanc. Alex is a student at Concordia University who currently works at the National Bank of Canada as an analyst. He also has a YouTube channel dedicated to financial literacy called 5 Minutes or Less Essential Finance. Welcome to episode 5 of the Money Class podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Money Class podcast. My name is Kosta and this is episode 5 already. How's everyone doing?
I'm great.
Good. Hey, Kosta.
So Marc, introduce yourself and we'll jump right in. We have a guest for this episode, so that's really interesting.
So glad to have you guys here. It is the holidays episode, so that is why the explanation why we do have our red and the white Christmas hats. It is our holiday episode. So and for that we have a surprise, which is Alexandre LeBlanc. He's a student. He's actually a good friend of mine from Concordia, studying finance as well. And he's very involved in the finance community, both on his professional life, but also, personally, whether it be through his social media platforms, his YouTube channel, and just, things like this, where he'll just enjoy chatting about finance for the next 40 minutes with us. So, Alex, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself more than what I did, and then we'll hop into the episode.
Well, you pretty much wrapped it all up there. I don't think anything else needs to be said, but I definitely appreciate the warm welcome. I appreciate being here. It's an honor. So thank you so much for inviting me.
No worries. And the first guest, so we'll make it count.
Oh, I'm really the first guest here. Okay.
Yeah. Alex thought this was some high production.
Cut the camera too. No, joking.
Oh, it's an honor.
Today sponsored by.
Yeah, 5 minutes or less.
5 minutes. Yeah, my parents' Wi-Fi connection. So, Kosta, so you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question, and I want to start with this because I think this pretty much, I think this is the motivation for like a lot of what you do. From what I see, you write on your LinkedIn bio that you're working to make the world a better place, and you're committed to inspiring others to actualize their ideas, right? And my question is, why is that so important? And what are you doing to make it happen now? Or how are you planning to make it happen?
That's a great question. I think that's a bit of a life goal that's going to be a constant during the whole rest of my life. So, it's obviously a work in progress, and I'm sort of taking this goal step by step. But the number one thing right now would be helping others through my YouTube channel. Obviously, it's a bit of a cliche and everything, but financial literacy is something that I've always been an educator. Like when I was 16 years old, I was a swimming teacher, and then and I started tutoring at 14 as well. And I've kept on doing those things ever since. And so teaching is something that's really dear to me, and I always love basically helping people grow. I think there is no greater joy than that, especially now during the holidays. So, I think I want to do my part in the world, and it's starting with my YouTube channel. So, eventually, I've had my whole life planned out in a bunch of tiers, and so right now I'm doing what I can. But obviously, I'm a student. I have a lot of work and priorities and this and that. But part of what I want to do down the line is perhaps something more of an emphasis on maybe helping the environment or social justice or something like that. Obviously, these are huge guidelines, but that's kind of the direction I'm headed in. And even though it is cliche, I am sticking true to it, and I really mean it when I do say it.
Well, yeah. Well, you want to leave the world a better place than it was when you got there, and it's the same when you go camping, right? Campground rules, you leave it as good or better as when you arrive. But it's also a question of you lifting the tide at the same time, right?
Exactly.
So we can always be seeking to be the fastest, the most successful, the smartest, this. But if you lift the tide and you bring up your peers with you, and you bring your surrounding, that's going to be impacting you, better in every single way, more than you'll be able to do by yourself.
Absolutely, because like at the end of the day, what is success if you're living it alone? It's really success is shared with everyone. That's how you really
that's so true.
life, in my opinion. Anyways,
It's well, what you're saying there, especially, it's about community building. If you really think about it, when you're helping someone, whether it's through like teaching or through, I don't know, just connecting with them in any way, you're connecting with them by it's very much about telling the story, and then at the end of the day finding like common ground through that story and finding like similarities. And I think that's what, making the world a better place, which you're saying. It's like that whole idea is a cliche, but I think it's about community building if we do it successfully, and that's really important. So I'm really happy with what you're saying there. It's really
and
great.
Just to add one small thing that from what you were saying is, I have this philosophy, and I say to everyone I meet all the time, and it's, I can only go upwards. So obviously, in the meantime, you have failures, but every single, experience that you go through, in the long term, it's going to be an upward direction. I don't know how to elaborate on that, but it's basically like, I always want to do better. You're not going to just stop yourself at and be content with what you have. I think inertia is like one of the worst things.
Well, it's
positive, like inertia brings you forward, no? Right? You have a good inertia. You're working hard. You're studying. And then it's pushing you to continue. And what do you mean inertia is a
okay?
What does that mean?
When I say inertia, I mean like in science, like the definition of inertia is like something that if you don't add a force to it, it's just going to stay as it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the definition of inertia. And so like basically in my life, I'm trying to combat inertia. I'm trying to always be in movement and always try to create and advance forward and only go upwards,
It's that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say, it's that growth mindset. It's like, even if you have something bad happen to you, or you think you're like moving backwards, I think that there's like something to learn from that, and it's just going to push you forward, like in the future, right? Growth mindset, self-improvement, that's what it's all about. So for sure.
CEO mentality.
CEO mentality. Of course.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's great. And you're saying about moving forward and by always going above and beyond, but also helping others. And over the summer, if I'm not mistaken, or at least during the first COVID quarantine, you started a YouTube channel, 5 Minutes or Less Essential Finance. Could you kind of walk us through exactly what you're doing and what was the process of starting? Because that's usually the hardest part, right? The inertia to begin. So what is that you're doing, and how did the idea come about, and were you thinking about it for so long before actually starting, or how about you give us a bit of backstory about that?
No, definitely. Well, first of all, maybe just to give a bit of background, I've always been involved on the YouTube side of things. So this is something that maybe I should not say online, but I used to own a Call of Duty YouTube channel back when I was like 12.
Okay.
Well, that's really cool. It's gaming.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the name, but it's somewhere.
Someone's gonna find it now.
Yeah, or somebody might expose me, like a friend or something. But anyways, it's I used to make a lot of like Call of Duty montages, like with music and everything. So the whole editing process is something that I was always familiar with, and I was always really inspired by these YouTubers. I just always thought it was so interesting how they could create lifestyles based off of making videos on YouTube. I love the whole creative side of it and the freedom also. Like that's something that really attracted me and inspired me. So YouTube to begin with has been something that has like pretty much always been on my mind. And so, obviously the Call of Duty thing didn't really pan out, but I started with that, and eventually you grow up, and I sold my PS4 2 years ago, and I don't really play video games anymore, but that whole side of it always sort of stayed in the back of my mind. And so basically when the pandemic came, obviously I think it changed everyone's lives, and for me especially, I had a lot of free time, and I'm the kind of person who always wants to have something on the go at all times. And, usually with school and everything, it was filling up my schedule. But when the pandemic hit, I had a lot of free time, and I was thinking, wow, maybe I should create something. So that's basically the whole backstory, the creation behind my channel. But
so you were always active. You were always active in YouTube. You're kind of going back. You did your Call of Duty stuff, and then you stopped, and then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden you have time, and you said, "Well, let me do something." So you took the initiative, and you kind of took the lemon and made lemonade out of it.
Exactly. Very well said.
Right?
Yeah.
And from the topics you could.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I just said it had been a few years though. So like I wasn't making Call of Duty videos right before. Like I stopped probably in Sec 4 or something like that.
Well, that's what's interesting though. When you came back this year, you decided to do it on finance, 5 minute or less finance essential. Is that right? Is that what it's called?
Essential finance.
Essential finance.
Yeah. And you know, part of what motivated me to start this channel, specifically 5 minutes or less, is well, I get a lot of my sources and a lot of my financial education comes from YouTube, as has always been for a bunch of other things as well, like lifestyle and, you know, mindset kind of things, and, you know, back then Call of Duty. But I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos, and especially during the beginning of the pandemic, and I just kept getting frustrated because every single like
20 minutes long, huh?
Yeah, they're all 20 minutes.
Exactly. They all like never end. They're amazing, but they never end. It's like I have to dedicate 4 hours of my day to watch like 6 videos.
Exactly. And who has time for that? So that's basically the inspiration for 5 minutes or less specifically.
Yeah.
Even though I have not necessarily stuck to it, but that's, I still stick with it with the mentality though. So even though my video is 10 minutes, it's packed, and like the intro isn't longer than like 30 seconds. So.
Yeah, but that's what you want. You want it to be, you know, relevant information and you know, straight to the point. And I think that's really cool, but that's also a challenge that you give for yourself, right? Yeah. It's when you give yourself a time constraint, or you say, I want to be able to give out a message in 5 or 10 minutes, whatever it is, and you have, you know, this much information to fill in. Well, you get to take off all you know, all the flutter, you take off everything that's all the fat, and you just given the good part, right? And you write that down, you draft it, and then you record it, and then all of a sudden you've got a 5-minute video that's just jam packed, and you come out of it, you know, as an audience, as someone who watched it, I was like, oh wow, I really learned a lot in the few minutes that I was watching it.
Yeah,
I think
it's a really hard process, though, I have to say. Because sometimes, you know, there's just so much good information, and you just want to put it all in there. You want to create like a very all-encompassing review of a stock or whatever. And especially if you're investing in it, like you want to instill confidence in the people in your audience. And so you want to basically like give your full thesis around the stock. And that's really hard to do under 5 minutes.
Well, the beauty of having it be 5 minutes or 10 minutes long, the shortness of it makes it accessible to more people, right? So you're reaching a bigger audience, and you can impact more people's lives. I think that's how I would see it too, right? Yeah,
and part of the whole thing for me is also efficiency. So, you know, I've streamlined a lot of processes. Like, as you've seen, a lot of my videos have the same sort of intros, the same sort of conclusions, so basically, like, I don't have a bunch of different files every time I edit. I just re-edit over every single video. And so that's why you'll see a lot of memes and GIFs and backgrounds and things. And it's just, that's basically how I've sort of like gotten to streamline the process, make it a lot more efficient. Because I'm all about efficiency. And that's kind of like my challenge.
Well, I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, go. You were going to finish. Sorry, I interrupted you there.
I was going to go into a whole other tangent, but go ahead.
No, because I just wanted to say you're essentially teaching people about the business world, and at the same time you're almost starting your own little business. So it is as much of a process for you as it is for people when they're watching a video and trying to learn about a topic. So I think that's beautiful. So that's something to think about. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I know. I just want to bring it back though to like finance and the way you're delivering the information. And I'm sure when you started, because I have my own YouTube channel, and when I started, there's a lot of kind of doubt and insecurity that goes around, like, about making these videos, because you are putting yourself out there, and not just necessarily putting yourself out there, but putting your creation out there. I'm sure even though you weren't using your voice in the beginning, there was still difficulty just releasing a video, because maybe it just goes with, you have your bar is here and you're making videos, and sometimes you feel like you're not reaching that bar of like perfectionism. Is that
absolutely? And I definitely feel like that bar has increased over time, especially because you see which videos do well, which videos do badly, and what are the things that sometimes people catch on and they're like, ew, that was disgusting. And it's not necessarily easy to take criticism, but as I said, I only want to go upwards. So
might as well, yeah. And I guess you want to go upwards, and so do the stocks that you want to invest in your portfolio. And that kind of quite the transition.
What a transition, Mark.
And I love it. And I was wondering, what is your process? How do you find, because you're, if anyone knows you like finding these stocks that are undervalued, or that have like $50 million market caps, but you say there's a possibility of it to go 10x, right? And a lot of people know Apple and Tesla and Amazon, but not a lot of people know the companies that you kind of present. So I was wondering, what is your process? How do you find these good companies, and then you scrap a lot of them that you come across, or would you or do you still do a video even if you find that your company isn't as interesting?
Absolutely. I mean, look, even just last week, I was doing an analysis on this company, and I was just looking, and I wrote the whole script, everything. And the more I was looking into it, I was like, wow, this is a crap investment. Like, and then, what's hilarious is yesterday it popped 40%, but that's
awkward.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of awkward. But then again, I looked into it, and there's no
didn't make sense.
There's no reason why it did. So at the same time, that kind of makes me feel better. Hold on, what was your question again?
No, so how do you find the companies? Yeah,
exactly. How do I find good stocks? Well, the number one thing is I'm just connected with, I'm very exposed to this whole industry, as a whole. So whether, it's starting with my whole YouTube community, but it's also the people I know personally. We talk about it all the time. Like, I am very much invested in this whole world, right? It is a world in itself, you can sort of argue, but, so to give you more specifics, I get a lot of sources from YouTube, and I don't only look at the big YouTubers. I like the small ones because they're the ones who find those little gems that, the more people you follow, the more chances you have of falling onto a gem, basically. And so I do follow a lot of YouTubers, probably around 20. Okay. I don't watch all of their videos, but usually what I do is I'll click on a video, I'll skip to the last like 2 or 3 minutes, I'll get the gist of it. And then if it is something that interests me, then I'll watch the whole video.
And you'll go back and you'll watch the entire thing.
Yeah, and then maybe I'll consider making a whole video on it. So, yeah, there's YouTube. That's number one. Number two is Twitter. Twitter is a huge source. There, it's the same thing. I follow all of those YouTubers, plus a lot of people who are more specifically just on Twitter. And then there's Instagram, and I also work at a bank in wealth management, so that kind of helps as well.
So you're exposed to kind of from everywhere. So it's really it's really like all encompassing, about your personality and about the person who you are, because it's something that it's just natural, right? It's natural to get all these sources, because you're just you're tired, not your entire day, but a lot of your day is structured around this idea about this world. Exactly.
And it's always an ongoing conversation. Everything that you do, I mean, I see finance everywhere. Like it's kind of, like when you're talking to someone and they tell you like, oh, I just found out this is the most awesome pair of soccer shoes. Well, right off the bat in my head, I'm thinking, oh, this person really likes these soccer shoes. well, that makes me think that probably another 100,000 people think these soccer shoes are awesome. So let's see, is this a public company? That's how you could find good gems.
Okay, that's good. That's how like Crocs, I
that's-
think, started, right? I think Crocs was able to surge at the beginning when it was starting, because all of a sudden people noticed that, oh my God, there's this incredible product. Why hasn't anyone caught on to it?
Yeah, exactly. And so your biggest insider secret is your own life, actually. Like,
That
you
is so
don't need
true.
insider trading. So every single person is exposed to thousands of products a day, and it's up to you to spot which are the ones that are going to be successful. And you can actually tell. There's a lot of them, like, just from personal experience. This restaurant chain, is going to be successful, or this was the best pizza you ever had. And then maybe you can even talk to the owner, or you just see the way that they treat their customers and this and that. And these are all little cues, even though we're not talking about finance specifically. It is something that can indicate, that can bring you to the next 10x, 100x investment.
Okay, so you're really just thinking, you're really taking a step back, and you're looking at, okay, this is something that I like, so probably someone else likes it, and if that means, then you're onto something, right?
Yeah.
I guess same with an idea, with a business idea, whether it be with stock, but like you said, with the restaurants, right? If there's a restaurant that everyone loves going to, and there's always a lineup in front, well, maybe that's maybe it's a reason that the business is doing well, and maybe they may expand, or maybe they close down if there's no one ever going in it, right? So,
exactly.
I think it's to be
I want to
receptive.
dig deeper. I want to dig deeper in that, because you said, like you both said this, but it's really about looking at your life, seeing what people are really messing with, what people are really engaging with, and then you can go deeper into like the actual companies behind the products or services. And I think even with businesses, a lot of people say that, businesses is about identifying a problem you have in your life, or, you see in the world, and finding a solution to that problem, right? So all of that kind of goes together. And I really like what you say, where it's really about checking what you're thinking in your life, what problem there is in your life, or what you find that is really engaging to you, and kind of learning more about it. Always asking why, what, who, all of that stuff. That's so true.
Exactly. Investing is for people who are curious. If you want to be successful, you have to be curious.
That's true.
Yeah, you have to ask the questions.
But with that, I have a question. What would you say is then the biggest misconception about investing in the finance world, business, and all of that stuff?
Well, I think a lot of people, that's a good question. I think a lot of people would say that finance is boring. And I definitely agree to a certain extent. But as with anything, it's what you do with it that determines whether or not it's boring for you. And the way I see finance is not necessarily the end goal. For me, finance is a tool. And so what I see behind all of these numbers, I see a company. I see what's going behind this, what the factory, the workers, all of the work that they're putting into something. And so a lot of people think of finance and they just think of this person like who's sitting at a computer and just typing numbers, like linking Excel sheets and doing all of these. Those are boring. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, not all of my finance classes are fun. Actually, I much even prefer, I'm doing a psychology minor. I much prefer my psychology minor than my finance minor. I'm not gonna lie. But what I love about finance is that it just explains the real world, and people, people should not necessarily see it as something that's so boring and so negative. Like, it's a tool. It's actually all around you all the time. Everything you see is made out of finance.
It's finance, yeah.
And whether you want it or not, it's going to be in your life as well. You're going to have to get a mortgage. You're going to have to do your own budget, your financials, and the sooner you get to learn about these things, the more you'll be able to make informed decisions, and ultimately, become more successful down the line.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I think that's like both Kosta and I were part of penny drops at Concordia, and actually Kosta the national team. But that's really a void that I'm noticing more and more in the world that we live in, right? It's the fact that the financial literacy seems to not be present in most cases. And you know, I'm all, you know, my bubble is obviously very finance oriented, very business, you know, very academic, because that's the path that I've chosen for myself, and that's one that obviously you've chosen for yourself as well, right? All your peers talk about investing in stocks and different, just numbers, right? And I find it's really too bad that the education system hasn't found a way to integrate this in traditional academia, and you have to resort to, you know, podcasts and penny drops and YouTube in order to get what should be base knowledge. And I find that very, you know, I find it unfortunate, but I also find it an opportunity for us all, right? You know, there's these I have incredible friends. I have incredible friends who are, you know, whether it be they're in law school or in med school, or they're, you know, taking international business classes, not necessarily finance linked, or whatever, or marketing or arts or literature. You know, I have these incredible friends, you know, very, very brilliant, but have no financial education. And it's like, you know, where are all these, you know, what's going to happen in a few years when they're going to have, you know, a salary coming in, and hopefully a good salary, but also, you know, start planning, you know, for family, for, you know, maybe plan, you know, 40 years in advance for retirement, because compound interest is a beautiful thing. So the earlier you start, the better you're going to be set up for the future. And I find it unfortunate that we haven't made that a number one priority with, you know, with our biology classes, with our chemistry classes, with our literature and our French and our music classes, you know, to build, you know, to build a complete citizen of the world. You have to know how money works, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what's driving, you know, businesses, and that's what's driving your salary, which putting a roof over your head is money, whether or not you like it or not. And you don't have to be fixated on that 24/7, and you shouldn't. And I think that's another problem, that people are looking at their stock portfolio every single day being, oh, I've lost 5%. Oh, I gained 5%. It's a terrible drug.
It is.
Don't do it because you get emotional, right? So a bit of volatility now is like, oh, I just lost $10,000. Well, you didn't actually lose anything. It's all unrealized.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I just want to say that was one of the big reasons. Personally, I came into university majoring in English literature, and then I decided to do a double major by adding economics to my studies, because exactly like what Marc just said and what you just said, it's like that is very much such a big part of our lives and so influential that you kind of need it, and it's not being taught in schools. So yeah, I just wanted to add that it's maybe for those who are watching or listening, maybe consider adding a minor, or maybe adding a major in like a business field like finance or economics or something like that. I think it could be very beneficial.
Well, one thing that's for certain is that if you're listening to the podcast, you're already on the right track.
That's true.
Yeah, that's very true.
Then you'll subscribe to Alex's YouTube channel after, so then you'll be two steps ahead.
You'll get to tag along the journey.
No, but it's true. You know, it's an all-encompassing. You know, it's you know, it's part of our everyday lives, and it's something that dictates, you know, our lifestyles, and, you know, how we end up having retirement. Because if you work, you know, 40 years in a field, and you never really started saving, or you started saving a few years after, you could have been the best worker, the smartest person, but then you have, at the end, you retire, you have, you know, little amount in your bank account. And I think that's a scary proposition, and I find that, you know, I find that very scary, and I hope that no one of our generation is going to have to be faced with that, because we have all the tools at our disposal.
Yeah, and it's absolutely mind-blowing, the stuff that people tell me. Well, obviously, like, I want to be supportive, I want to help them, but it just blows my mind, you know, like, this is stuff that you should know, you know, like, and I'll be glad to teach it to you, but, you know, it's crazy. Like last week, we just sold the condo that we live in right now, so we won't be getting this view in a few months, but unfortunately. But yeah, last week I taught my mom about mortgages. She did not know about leverage. She did not know about interest rates, you know, and I was explaining, well, this is what you could do. You could buy a duplex. You can rent half of it, and that amount will pay for the rent. The money that you'll get from rent will pay for your mortgage, you know, and by doing that, you'll be able to afford a nicer home. You know, you'll have so much money. You'll have X amount of dollars in your bank account, and that money will be you can invest that money. You know, mortgage rates have never been this low. You know, you could probably get a mortgage for like even less than 2%. Like
1.5%.
Yeah, it's
like
absolutely
1 point
insane.
something.
Like you can easily beat that in the stock market, especially if you're following my stock picks. But
no, but I think it's also a question of delayed gratification, right? You know, as humans, we want to now. We want now, but the more we delay, I think that the greater the pot that the pot at the end of the rainbow is going to be.
Absolutely.
Right?
And she was looking at mortgage, and she was scared about it. She said, because that's debt. I don't want to have debt. And there was a huge misconception around it. I said, look, you could even, if you wanted, you could put the money from the sale of the condo, you could put it in a bond or whatever, some safe Canadian bond or whatever, and you'll make more than your mortgage. So, you know.
Well, yeah, it doesn't take much in order to do a bit more than, well, it's like, you know, student line of credit, which you could take out at prime plus 1%, I think, for like a business. And I think if you're like in med or law, it's like prime minus something.
Exactly.
And prime being one in, what's prime? Like one in the high ones. So there's like all these, as soon as you dig a bit deep inside and you're a bit interested, there's a lot of opportunity that could be had. But for people who don't have, who have like a limited knowledge about, investing in stocks, and have limited time and maybe don't want to put in all the time that one may take, to do the fundamental analysis and to be looking at, to be looking at, what their competitors are and what's good in the market. How would you recommend this person kind of go about, investing and saving? Because Kosta and I have a very, we have a very similar approach. I was wondering what you would be, the way that you would see this.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people approach me who don't necessarily have a lot of knowledge. And what I tell them is, look, individual stock picking is not for everyone. It's a niche, and you really do need to have a bit more knowledge to be able to do that in a responsible way. Because obviously there's gambling and then there's investing. There's a difference. And what I would tell people is, look at the trend over a long period of time. The stock market, if this thing that you're looking at is going up over the past 5 years, then it's probably going to do that over the next 5 years after that. And so what I tell people is, people who don't necessarily have the time to look into specific companies and don't have the knowledge, said, look into ETFs. And I'm a bit of a upside chaser. Like I don't necessarily recommend buying the SPY or the NASDAQ or something so vague. Like, no, that's
like the SPY being the index, the 500 largest companies in by market cap in the as a finance major. I'm like by market cap in the US, right?
Market cap, yeah.
So,
what I would say
that's the SPY.
Is pick an ETF, not a mutual fund, because usually they have higher fees. People don't necessarily know the difference, but pick an ETF. It's called ETF, and do a little bit more effort and pick an ETF that actually is actually something that you believe in long term. So, for instance, let's just think about it a bit. Like, instead of just putting your money in the general market, and then you'll probably just follow the economy. Like, that's kind of boring. Might as well follow something that you care about, and then you'll be more inclined to look into it. So, I'll give you an example. I'm really passionate about the environment, so find an ETF about the environment. Electricity, renewables, 5G. Like, if you're obsessed with computers, technology, video games, there's ETFs for every single little niche that you are interested in. Just find what you like and invest in it.
And part of finding something that you like is that you know it best, right? Compared to a lot of different industries. Like, I'm really big on media and entertainment and that whole industry. And I remember talking to Marc I think it was like 1 or 2 years ago, when I was just investing in robo-advisors because I didn't know much about the industry. And the first thing I decided to go buy is Disney stock, because I just love Disney and I love their product. So it goes back to what you just said right there. If you know the industry, look further into it, and there are ETFs for everything. So
yeah. And you're the best inside. You have the best inside information. It's your circle of friends. It's your peer group. It's what you know.
Exactly.
Right? If Kosta knows that the next Star Wars movie is going to be a banger, well, in that case, he's going to invest maybe a bit more in Disney and say, look, I think this is the director and this is the producer and this is the cast. I really, really think it's going to be a good movie and the stock's going to go up because of that, right? And something I would never be able to analyze because I don't have nearly the extent of knowledge that Costa has in movies. But that's just, that's something that more than other people. So you could leverage your knowledge, for the betterment of your portfolio.
Exactly. So for people who really know nothing, I'd say stick with ETFs.
Yeah.
But maybe specific ETFs instead. The beauty with an ETF is that you just put your money in there and you're investing in a pool of companies. And so if the whole pool goes up, then, then you're good. You're going to make money off of that. So that's kind of the advantage over investing over a specific company. Like, here's the thing about Disney. Maybe Disney is overvalued.
Yeah.
And if you're not in finance, you won't know that. Even though you know that the next Star Wars is going to be an excellent movie, it's going to, blow up the box office. Well, maybe it won't even compare to whatever their market cap is.
That's true.
I can think of Tesla and a bunch of other things.
About that, it's because people are investing, thinking about how the companies are going to perform 10 or 20 years down the line, right? And not necessarily how things might be right now or in even 5 years. So
but isn't that the point of investing? Isn't that the point? Is that you wanted to, you're investing, you're putting your money somewhere so that a company could use it, could grow, and the value of it would be bigger in the future. So isn't investing part of what the value is going to be in 5 or 10 years?
That is what investing is about. You're investing in the future, and you're investing in a good investment is a good vision. Also, it's something that will grow over time and do hopefully what you hope it will. And visionaries, people who hop on trends before they happen, that's when you can make a lot of money. And that's why I look at these small companies before they blow up. But the same goes for industries.
So with that, I want to ask you, because you do look at a lot of companies like that, and I asked this to a bunch of my connections on LinkedIn, and a lot of people had interesting answers. But if you had $1,000 right now, and you were 21 or early 20s, late teens, where would you invest that money?
Where would I invest my money? Gosh.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to say one company?
Answer it the way you want to answer it.
Okay, well, based off of all of the knowledge that I have personally, if I had to put 1K and just look at it in 10 years, I'd either invest in like Jumia or CleanSpark. Those are like my babies.
Okay.
But this is not investing advice.
No, exactly. Yeah. Obviously, make your own investment decisions. Do your own research, please.
Yeah.
Important. I'm just a dude on YouTube. Hashtag don't sue me, bro. But yeah, and if you're not someone who's as experienced and necessarily has done the good due diligence on that specific company, maybe consider investing in an industry of the future.
Yeah. Like robotics or AI, like an ETF that kind of tracks that trend. I think that could also have a lot of positive impact in the future.
Exactly. You're guaranteed that the industry as a whole is going to get picked up. And the beauty with ETFs is that they're always in movement as well. It's active, like they are managed. Once the names inside of this ETF, they get swapped every year, and the winners are going to be at the top, undoubtedly. So it's a bit of a strategy if you think about it, actually.
Yeah, because it's professionally managed and it's not as active maybe as a mutual fund, but that's fine because you have the benefit of diversification. So not having all your eggs in one basket, and at the same time you get to reap the benefits of the industry doing well, and also a sector doing well, but also individual stocks that do well. You get to have the benefits. But if other companies don't do as well, in that case, you're not impacted as hard. I think that's really the main takeaway with an ETF, and that's why I also believe in it, and believe in them, because it's good to invest in individual stocks if you have the time and you enjoy doing it, and you listen to your peers and you make your own decisions. But at the end of the day, that's not realistic for most people. And an ETF, and where a lot where I also invest in, because I believe in certain industries, but I don't have to. I don't have necessarily maybe the time or the interest to find which company is is the leader in this specific industry, or find a pool of that, don't or necessarily don't have the time or the interest to find a pool of companies that do so. But I know that the industry itself is going to grow. So by doing an ETF, I have the possibility, the opportunity to reap the benefits without necessarily putting all the time and investment in it.
Exactly. And there is one more thing I would like to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kosta, you'd asked the question previously, what would I invest in $1,000 in? I said Jumia CleanSpark. But ideally, you would split that $1,000 within a few different, if you want the ideal scenario is you split this between like a few stocks. And I'm not a big proponent of concentrating all of your money into one stock. That's very risky. A lot of people tell me I'm going all in this company. I'm like, I like this company, but that much, like all of your, my rule.
There's a risk. There's a lot of risk.
Yeah,
there's a lot of risk. It can almost be borderline reckless.
It is. And my rule of thumb is it can't be more than 20% of your portfolio. Max, big max. Because
if you take a hit, if you lose 50% of the value, and in that case, it's only 10% of your portfolio. So that's something that you could be able to make up in 6 months or a year or whatever it may be.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you are at 20% and your stock doubles, well, that's still very significant on your portfolio as a whole.
It's true.
Yeah. Diversification. That's the answer.
That is. It's a trip to Costa Rica at one shot.
Exactly. Kosta, do we have time for one more question? We're pushing on 40 minutes.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask one final question. I don't know if you have one, Marc. We could finish it up with maybe one or two questions. But what is the number one thing you want people to know about this world altogether? Like the one thing you want to leave people with? If there has to be one thing, let's say everybody, like if someone skipped to the end of this podcast, what would it be?
So one thing,
like a main takeaway about finance.
A main takeaway, yeah, about this. Maybe it's something you talked about on your YouTube channel, or maybe it's something you've been thinking about. What's the one thing people should know, especially a student who's trying to learn a lot about the business world and is open to financial literacy for the first time?
Consistency.
Putting on the spot.
Like if I had to say one word, I would say consistency.
Consistency,
and perhaps even rationality. But yeah, I don't know. That was a bit of a curveball right there. But
that's good. But that's true. No, consistency. You're right about that. Whatever you do, you want to make sure it's consistent and you believe in what you're doing, and whether it be in your studies or in investing or whatever you do. I think that's a really strong way of looking at it.
Or even maybe curiosity, right? Like you want to make the best decisions that you can in every single specific moment, like based off of your capacity, your capability. And it doesn't need to be the same decision that like Ray Dalio would make, for instance. Like your decision has to be like, all I'm trying to say is don't rush into things. Like if there's a company that you want to invest in, like take your time, look at it, like there's no rush. Like the company's not going to disappear. Stay curious, and don't hesitate to ask for help, because people are there to, at the end of the day, finance, we're all there to help each other. It's kind of a community. So if you have anything, you could just DM me on Instagram. I'll probably answer you within 24 hours.
What a plug. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say something about that. I love what you just said. It's opportunities always open up. Don't stress too much about the daily and what's happening on every day. Like, it's easy to stress and be like, man, I wish I was in this position right now. But, if you just work towards that position, you might be there in 5 or 10 years. And, that's something that really, don't stress too much about the everyday. Long-term is the key.
What's the number one thing? I just realized what it is. Long-term CEO mindset.
Full circle. You're right. You got it.
There's one thing I had to say, it would be that. Because honestly, like everyone, I've seen this a lot during COVID, is they live in a short-term bubble. Okay. All of the decisions, well, no, I'm doing a big generalization, but a lot of the decisions I see people making are very short-term oriented. But like, if you just think about 5 months from now, what are this, like, where do you want to be? You know, why are you unhappy in the position you are right now? You know, like, start acting today, like, break it down, you know, create yourself a timeline, do a 1 year timeline, break it down. What do you have to do during that year? Then take that timeline, break it down. Okay, in this first half of the year, I'll have to do this. In that half the year, I can do that. This is realistic. Then you break it down every single month, and then you break it down every single week, and just go smaller and smaller and smaller. And create actionable, what do you call them? Actionable things that you could do. Actionable actions.
Goals or like to do in a way.
Create actionable steps that you can accomplish starting today, you know, even though it's a long-term mindset. You know, there are things that we do that are not fun. Like, I don't necessarily enjoy learning about depreciation amortization tables.
It's just a specific thing you don't like.
But like, you do it with the long-term mindset. You know that, like, okay, well, if you do this, you put your heart into it, you know, then it'll yield this result. You know, it's a process. Life is always a big process, and I feel people, they get overwhelmed by the short term. But if you break down your goals into something like more actionable, then sky's the limit, and there is no better time to start than now. Compound interest.
Exactly.
I think that's a beautiful way to end the episode.
There's nothing I could add more to.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a rant.
No, that's perfect.
That was great.
You left me speechless.
Yeah. So maybe just cut it to that last bit, because
no, it's perfect. It's perfect. The entire thing is going to be kept in. No, but it's true. And you know, and it's where do you want to see yourself in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months, 18 months. And you know, COVID has thrown a curveball to everyone. And I think it made us realize that we have to plan, but we also have to be lenient as well, and be able to move around and not be super strict in our ideals, but also have a certain directing line. And a lot of students, when they start university, they lack and they lack this directing line, and something that I had trouble finding at the beginning. But once I found that, you know, the purpose of studying and the purpose of going to the different clubs and different events really became apparent. And that's because I had certain goals and I wanted to achieve them. And I think by setting yourself, you know, goals, actionable steps that you could take for your 12-month objectives, you could definitely do something. You could definitely make it happen. And, you know, with the year right around the corner, there's no better time to start than now.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to take risks. Like, life is too short to have regrets. You only have one life.
True. Especially at the young age right now that we are all in, and a lot of our listeners are in. Yeah. Now is the time to take risks.
Exactly. During your 20s, you know, like when you're 30, you know, you maybe have a house, and then you'll have kids eventually, and like, then maybe you'll have to take a lot more factors into consideration. But right now, like, in your 20s, take risks.
It's the time, yeah.
You can all. It doesn't matter. Like,
so do we all in Tesla calls?
Kosta,
do you have anything else to add?
No, that's pretty much it. Well, actually, one last thing. Where can people find you? Plug everything you want to plug right now.
Well, I'm on every single platform that you can think of. So I have YouTube, I have a Twitter, I have a TikTok. It's not anywhere.
Oh, wow.
If you look it up, maybe you'll be able to find it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And eventually I will be hosting a Discord chat, so people will be able to talk, and I'll it'll be basically a Discord chat where I tell people like my stock picks, and we can have a discussion and start a community.
Amazing.
That's great. So people can find you, Alexandre LeBlanc, on social media, or 5 minutes or less. Both work, right?
Yeah, no, just 5 minutes or less, or El Blanco Finance. So either one or the other. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, with that, I just want to let everyone know that this has been episode 5 of the Money Class podcast. We had Alexandre LeBlanc on our show, and My name is Kosta.
I'm Marc.
And thank you very much for listening. We'll see you guys on episode 6. Also, Merry Christmas to everyone. This was the Christmas special, as you can tell.
Merry Christmas. Thank you guys
Merry
so much for hosting me. It was an amazing time.
Thank you for being here, Alex.
All
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
This has been episode 5 of the Money Class podcast. If you liked the episode, make sure to subscribe and follow the podcast. We release a new episode every week. See you next week. Bye-bye.